For me, it actually comes from one of the greatest Christmas films ever made, and that is Die Hard.
Yes!
And that is the death of Hans Gruber. Happy trails, Hans! It is one of the most perfect action films ever to exist. One that allows stupid machismo to be balanced by genuinely quite interesting storytelling, and a villain that is true, motivated by money, or that old cliche, but manages to get across as the slimiest, conniving, and more importantly, charming person in the room at any times. And I just thought that his death was utterly brilliant, not only because it was shown in slow motion as he's dropping, but also knowing the story that the director actually was saying, right, we're going to count to 3 and I'll drop you on 3. And he went 1, 2 and dropped him. So that look of surprise was like betrayal. It reminded me so much of like the Lion King, like Long Live the King. It was like that moment, but as an adult. A fantastic action film, full of blood and guts and violence, but mainly it's just down to that one scene of seeing the villain get his comeuppance for all of the absolute chicanery that he's been trying to pull throughout the film. A great actor, R.I.P., and a fantastic end to him. So yeah, best villain death.
I think it actually has to be Monsieur Candy from Django Unchained, because Leonardo DiCaprio, he knows how to play a real asshole, and the assholes don't get any realer than Candy from Django Unchained. I absolutely adore that film. It's such a great, getting Tarantino, he loves spaghetti westerns so much, so him getting to actually go and apply his love for that genre to his own film is great. Every single person in that film acts tremendously. I love Christoph Waltz. He's just fantastic as Schultz. But yeah, basically, everyone who's seen Django Unchained will know that they go to Candyland, which is the most awful plantation said to be in the American Deep South, and they go there to free Broomhilda, who is Django's wife, and everything is just awful. They get there, and he's even worse than the wildest depictions of the worst slavers ever, and they just have to because they're doing a ruse, they have to be nice to him. They have to go, oh, Monsieur Candy, I'll call you Monsieur, even though you can't speak French, and we're going to call you Monsieur, and do all that. And then eventually, just when they think they finally duped him into freeing Broomhilda, Samuel Jackson's character basically tells them that actually they're up to something, and then they have that really awful scene on the dinner table where you realize that everything's going bad, and then he has that awful monologue where Leonardo DiCaprio actually cuts his own hand and he's smothering bloody hands everywhere. It's really gross. And yeah, after that, they basically realize, okay, they're gonna have to pay through the nose to save Django's wife, and Candy's gonna make a massive profit from it, and it's really gross because he's an awful slave-owning white supremacist, and he should die. And basically, they go through that. They go to the parlor, and he just couldn't help himself. He's serving white cake as well because he's just disgustingly on brand. So he's serving white cake, and then obviously Schultz goes through with the bill of the signature, and then he's like, "Oh, aren't you forgetting something?" And then Schultz is like, "What? No, we're done. I'm getting out of here. You're an awful, despicable asshole, and I'll come back and kill you later." And he's like, "No, a business deal does not be concluded in the South unless you shake my hand." And he does that really awful, just cheating grin where he goes, "I insist," like that, and I'm just like, "Oh, you insist, do you?" Well, and then it's the most satisfying thing ever, because I think in that moment, screwing all the consequences right after, where you probably get shot by all of his mates after you killed him, I was just like, you know what, I think in that situation, after seeing that much horrid stuff, and then having the gall to just rub it in your face and go, "Oh, give me a handshake," I'd just be the same. I'd just be like, I couldn't resist, and then just get killed, and I'd have died happy at that moment in time, because he'd be dead too. I hate Calvin Candy, I hate him.
The most satisfying movie death, I think, comes in a film which has one of the least satisfying endings, which is The Mist, which is a fantastic film. The CGI is a bit janky, but the rest is so good. It's about a mist that comes in, surprisingly, full of supernatural creatures from another dimension, and a bunch of people who are trapped in a supermarket trying to basically survive and go out and see if they can find anything in there. One by one, just getting picked off, you know what I mean? There's people out there that want to go back and protect their loved ones. They don't know what's happened to them. They don't know what's in the mist. They don't know what's going on. They're just surrounded and trapped in this big glass-fronted supermarket store, which is not the ideal place to be when there's all sorts of creepy crawlies on the other side. Tentacles from Planet X, arachno mantis things. There's all sorts of problems out there. But whilst they're in the supermarket, there is this one woman, this one crazy fool who is a religious zealot, and is basically saying that all of this abhorrent creature phenomenon is basically God's will. All of it is his doing. He's punishing them. It's Armageddon. And she keeps banging on and on and on and on. She won't quit with it. She's like, I'm Mrs. Carmody and I know what's going on. And everyone at the beginning is like, oh, shut up, Mrs. Carmody. Shut up, you idiot. Shut up. And then she starts saying like, someone's going to die tonight. And because they're being attacked by supernatural creatures from another dimension, someone does die because, of course they do. There's all sorts of problems going to happen. Someone's going to die. So they're in this big mob justice scene where there's a group of people who are quite rational trying to protect the small boy from being murdered, and everyone else around them trying to grab him and be like, serve him up to Mrs. Carmody. And Ollie, like this, he's such a gentle soul. Ollie's like, he's that, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's always plays such a nice man. And he seems like a nice guy and then comes across and grows a pair and absolutely just pops one off in her stomach and smashes this glass bottle that she's holding. She don't really realise that's happened at first because this glass explodes. She's like, oh, my belly. And then as she's like, oh God, I'm dying, he fully pops another one off in her head, and it's so satisfying. She's like, thank God. Nobody's dead, they can get out, maybe they'll survive. And then obviously they'll get in the car and David shoots everyone in the head and then the military come in and it's all a mess. So it wasn't worth it, but it was a really satisfying moment at the very least, so yeah.
Well, I've actually got two because I'm a big cheater, but they are linked and I'll tell you why. The first is Captain Rhodes from Day of the Dead, because this guy in that story, he's sort of like this leader of this military group, and he's just a big idiot. He's just a thicko. He's supposed to be one of the last surviving humans in the zombie apocalypse. I don't know how he's survived so long. Through pure ignorance and guns, probably. But he's an absolute asshole all the way throughout this film, especially towards the zombie that is Bub. And finally, he gets, he starts learning stuff. He learns how to use a gun. And the zombie shoots him. And then he's like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? And he falls back into a group of other zombies. And there's a big jump in the gore effects between Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. And I was not prepared for this when I was watching them all in a row. Because he literally gets ripped apart in perhaps the most iconic zombie death of all time. Where he's shouting out this badass one-liner of, choke on him! And when he gets his head ripped off, his vocal cords start going, so he goes high and he's like, choke on him! And he goes completely gone. And it's one of the best baddies of all time, played by Joe Pilato, who sadly passed away at the start of this year. But genuinely, one of the best baddies, one of the most satisfying villain deaths. And this goes alongside David from Shaun of the Dead, who might not seem like a bit of a villain. He's just, he's Dylan Mulroney, he's a funny man. But in the context of that movie, he's an absolute idiot brain as well. He's a complete liability. He tries to shoot Shaun after Shaun's just killed his mum. He's a complete fool, and he deserves to get ripped apart, perhaps even more spectacularly than Rhodes does in Day of the Dead, because he stimulatively gets pulled into the window and he gets his guts ripped out, and it's like, good on you, you weasel. I hope you get lost. You're a tit head. You're an absolute titty-brained head, and I don't like you.
The most satisfying movie death of all time is Commodus in Gladiator. Oh. So, in order to be a bad guy, you have to make people think you're a bad guy, just a bad guy. Commodus is the biggest SH bag in film history because he revels in what he's doing. He's an incestuous, greedy, vain,
dad killing,
and it's a lovely old dad as well. Dumbledore makes me sad. And yet all of these things seem to give him more armor to feel better about himself, which just fundamentally that does not make him a good person. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have Maximus Decimus Meridius, who is one of the most wholesome heroes of all time, and he has a cause. His family have been killed by Commodus, and he's been imprisoned. You have that whole father of a murdered son stuff. You don't need me to go back into that. And naturally you root for him because he's a good guy and he's taking on a bad guy, one of the worst bad guys of all time. And you're like, this is going to be so good. We're finally going to get to see them go toe to toe, and there's no way that Commodus can do anything about Maximus because he had a fight with a tiger. That was nothing. Killed loads of people. That was nothing. All he wanted was to come up against Commodus, and he did. And they do this thing before the fight, which is the worst part of the whole film, where Commodus goes to visit him in his little prison thing, and he goads him a little bit, and then he gives him a cuddle and says, calls him brother, and it's like, oh, he's just a smarmy, awful person. And then he stabs him in the ribs, and you're like, oh, he's taken away the one thing that this whole film was leading towards, was Maximus's victory. And it's horrible, and he's so smarmy at that point that you just like want to punch your telly, but you don't because you've grown up. and then they have the fight, and like Commodus gets a few good hits in, but unbelievably Maximus wins and kills him in such a lovely. You get to feel how Commodus feels when he dies, and you just like. I'm not a big fan of violence. I don't say you should do it, but if you're faced with that situation, do violence. And then he dies squealing like a little pig, and it's just wonderful.
I think we can just kind of wrap this whole video up with this right now, because obviously it's Hitler. Of course, it's got to be Hitler. Hitler in Inglourious Basterds, another Tarantino movie, as you mentioned, that is just spectacular. And yeah, who doesn't like watching Nazis die? It's just really enjoyable. The whole scene is great. There's obviously the movie being shown where they don't realise, to quote Mitchell and Webb, that they're the baddies in this. There's the face of vengeance, the Jewish face of vengeance, which not only comes up on screen, which then subsequently obviously burns down, cooking half the people in the cinema, which is really enjoyable because they're Nazis, not because. But not only that, there's a wonderful shot of her face sort of playing off the smoke as the cinema burns down. There's obviously your boys, including the Bear Jew, just taking out everyone, just exactly what I do when I should be doing proper missions in like Call of Duty. Just you're all dying, all that reloading, etc. But of course, the highlight of all is when they open up the doors onto the balcony. Just pepper. It's not one shot, it's not two shots, it's an entire barrel going into Hitler. And just when you think, I think that satiated my thirst for watching Hitler die, they just, he's there on the floor, and he's barely got a face left. Honestly, I could watch Hitler die all day long.